Hi everyone, welcome back. So today's topic is we are going to understand how to pass arguments to a function and what do you mean by returning values from a function. So how to return values from a function. Okay, in my first tutorial we just got introduced to function and we have just had one simple function which used to print a simple statement, right? A kind of a message. And in this tutorial we are going to understand about arguments and how to return values, and then we are going to understand about the positional arguments. Okay, and we're going to see what this means, and then we are going to understand about the local and global variables. Now these are some, maybe if you're new, then this is first time maybe you're hearing these words. So we're going to understand all this, so immediately we will start. So okay, what are arguments? Okay, now for example we have this function. Okay, I'll just define a function and I name that as add. Okay, that's the name of my function, and then I have two parameters out here. Okay, now this is maybe a new term, parameters. So parameters are something that will collect the values for a function. Okay, so for example if I give something like x and y, so you can say that x comma y, these are two variables and these are the two parameters for the function add. Okay, so you can say that, just put this, that is x and y, okay, are two parameters. Okay, so it's you can have n number of parameters. So at this point I have two parameters depending on the requirement what the function is going to do. So basically this function add is going to add x plus y. So we are taking a very simple, very simple example of adding two numbers, but I want that work to be done by a function. Okay, so basically x and y, so basically for adding two numbers we require two numbers, isn't it? And when we require two numbers, so we require two variables to store those numbers. So we have these two numbers out here. So it depends on your requirement. Suppose you want to write a function for checking the for calculating the factorial of a number. In that case you'll just have one argument, that is x, right? But at this point I want to add two numbers, so we have x and y, and then we will do the addition, that is, I can collect that thing into a variable k, x plus y. Okay, and then this addition I will return to the main function. Now we have not yet started with the main function, we are just defining the function, the function add. Okay, so now this is where my function ends. Now this is a keyword, okay, just like the def is a keyword. So what this will do is, if I pass the arguments to this function, now how to pass an argument? For example, if I simply say a is 2 and b is 5, now this I am doing into the main function. I'm outside this particular function, so I'm into the main program, you can say, not the main function, the main program. And then I can say I is equal to add, and I pass the values a comma b. So it is showing you the arguments, the definition x comma y, right? This is the help that you get when you use the Spider IDE. Okay, so a comma b, and then I'll just use the print I. Now what is happening over here? As I said, since this is a function definition, so the interpreter will completely ignore this for the first time when it interprets the keyword, that is def, and immediately it will start with this line number 6, that is a is equal to 2. So it will assign the value 2. So a will have the value 2, b will have the value 5. And this, as I said in my first tutorial, this is called as the function call. So we are calling this function with this particular statement, but there is something different, and that is we have I is equal to add. So even this is a function call, and just that whatever we return from this function, we are going to collect that into I. So we have this I. So if a function is returning something, so we need to collect that in some variable name, right? So I just have this variable I. So whatever this function returns, I'm going to collect that into the I variable. So in my first tutorial, we just saw one simple function which was not returning anything. So if it is not returning anything, we don't need to collect that in anything. So I just need to have something like add, right? But in this situation, we have a variable that is k. The value of k will be, it is going to return this value of k. So I need to collect that value in some variable. So I'm just saying this as I. You can use any variable name. And then I'm printing I. So what is happening over here? This is a function call, and this a and b, okay, a and b, these are called as the arguments. Okay, understand? So this is a function call, and a and b are arguments. Okay, these are called as arguments. Okay, so these are called as arguments. So the value that you pass to the function, so I'm passing a comma b. This value, these two variable values I'm passing to this function. So a and b will be called as arguments, and x and y will be called as parameters since they're receiving the value. So whatever I pass from a will be received to x. Now this is position wise. So this is the next point that I wanted to explain, that is understanding the positional arguments. So the positional arguments is like the first value a will get assigned to the first parameter. The first argument value will get assigned to this x, that is the parameter x, and the second argument, that is b, the value of b, that is 5, will get assigned to y. So this is position wise. So first to first and second to second. Okay, and then what I'm doing inside this function is I'm simply adding these two values, assigning it to k, and I'm just returning that value. Now whatever value I return from this function, that is the k value, that will be the addition. Since this is 2 plus 5, so it will be 7, and that 7 will be collected into I. Okay, and then we will move to the next statement, that is print I. So this is, if we talk about line by line execution, so this will get interpreted first, but since this is a function, so the interpreter will ignore it, and then it will jump to line number 6, then line number 7, and then from line number 8 it is a call, so it will jump to, again, that is line number 1, 2 and 3 will get executed, and then it will return the value, that is 7, and that I will collect in the variable I, and then I'll print that value. So this is how the execution, line by line execution, will take place. This I took this particular exercise in my previous tutorial. Okay, so if we talk about this function, so we have this k is equal to x plus y, so we can just ignore this third variable, and I can use x plus y out here. So the calculation will be done on the spot and it will be returned, isn't it? So this way also we can do it. Okay, I'll just make this indentation, right? So we don't require this third variable. So I can simply say return x plus y. So the calculation x plus y, it will get returned to I. It will get collected into I, and then we'll print I. So if you see the output for this, it is the value 7, as you can see out here. So let us just give some message, that is the addition is, okay, and then a comma and I. Now if you run it, and you can see this output, the addition is 7. Now this function actually does not make much of a sense, because we are just doing addition of two numbers. So sorry. So if I'm just adding two numbers, so in that case why do I require this function? I can simply use a single statement, that is x plus y, and collect that into I, isn't it? I can easily do this. So this function actually does not solve much of a purpose. Means I don't require a function basically, but there are so many instances where you actually require a function. So let us have one more function, and I will do that. That is name this function as a factorial, or factorial. Okay, factorial. So factorial. So it will basically calculate the factorial of the number x, or I can give this name as n, isn't it? And then what I will do is okay, I have this value a. So if you see this situation, factorial, so I just require one parameter, and I need to pass one argument. So I'll accept a value from the user. At this point I'm just using a variable a, and I'll just pass that as my argument. So I'll just change this to factorial. Okay, factorial. And then we will write the code for calculating the factorial of a number. So factorial of a number, so simple, we'll just use a I loop, or we just require a variable that is fact, or any kind of variable name you can take. It's not like fact only, it is the everywhere we have the same variable name that is used. That is because that's the naming conventions that we follow, isn't it? And then I will use the for loop, go start from, use the range function, and I will go till n, but this range function will go from 1 to that is n minus 1, so I just need to make this plus 1. Okay, and then I'll just simply say fact is equal to fact into I, and then outside the loop I'll just return the fact. That's it. So this will basically calculate the factorial of a number, and then outside this loop I'm just returning this factorial, the calculation part, and I will receive that into I, and then I'm just printing I. So I need to change this message, that is the factorial of the factorial is more than sufficient, isn't it? So let us run this and we will see. So the factorial of that is 5 is 120, so you can see the answer out here, isn't it? So this is how we can work with functions. So this a will be called as the argument, and this n will be called as the parameter. But what if I don't pass anything? If I don't pass anything out here and I try to run this code, and then there will be an error. That the error is that is a missing one positional argument. So it is if we have two parameters in the definition, so we need to have two arguments. Understand it? Okay. So in positional arguments, if the number of arguments should be equal to the number of parameters in the function definition. So if any of the argument is missing, in that case, this will throw an error. Okay, so we need to pass this argument, that is n. So make sure that if you have two arguments you are passing and we have something only one. So for example, if I have I'm not having anything out here and I'm trying to pass something, even in this case this will basically throw an error. Okay, or I'm just trying to pass a, so even this will throw an error, that is the function takes 0 positional arguments, as you can see over here. So we need to have a parameter, so whatever value I pass from here, it should get collected maybe in a variable called as n. Okay, so this is how to work with function. Now I call this function over here, so I can anywhere, if I have there again a value, that is I can simply pass the value. In fact, just call the function n number of times. So I pass the value 4. I can just copy this and keep on pasting. So now you can understand that we are giving this call to this function. Okay, and we are collecting. I'll just print this, copy this and just paste it over here. Okay, and you can call to this function n number of times as you want, as per your requirement into your main program. And that's the that's the best thing that we can do is if we have a repetitive code, so we can just put that repetitive code in a function and you can just simply give a call to that function. So your entire code looks quite compact and quite organized in a way. So that's the importance of a function. Without function we cannot have any software. Every software is made of modules and functions. Understand it? Okay, so this is the first call. I'm just passing the variable a, so the y so the variable a has the value 5, so the value 5 will be passed to n. And over here I'm straight away passing the constants, that is 4, 5, 3, 2. So 4 will be received to n, then 5 will be received to n, and so on. So if I run this code, and you can see the output, that is factorial is 120. That's the first call, that is 120, and then it is 24 because I'm passing the value 4. So the factorial of 4 is 24, and then again I'm passing 5. So you can see the output, again it is 120, then it is 3, it is 6 for the value 3, and for value 2 it is 2. So that's the factorial of a number. So you can give n number of times, you can give the call as per your requirement, when you're developing a program. Okay, so this is how to do it. Now the last part is understanding the local and global variables. So now this is a very important thing to understand. So okay, this function, I just delete this much. Okay, now understand this a and this n are two different variables, isn't it? Because the names are different. So you obviously, it is quite understandable that it is two different variables. So right now I'm just not concerned with the factorial. I just want to make you understand what do you mean by local and global variables. Okay, so a and n, these are two different variables. But what if I make this as a? Okay, now you may get confused also that that this, since the name is same, the variables will be same, but no. Okay, understand that if I give the variable as over here as 5 and this value was 2, and I can try to print a, okay, and I'm not returning anything in this function. Let us just change this name, that is xyz, because we're not calculating any factorial. Okay, so I'll just use this one, and then okay, okay, so everything looks fine. So let us just warning. Okay, so now what is happening out here, since I'm passing the value that is the value 2 of the variable a, and this a, I'll be collecting into this a. These two are two different variables. Just like in my previous example, we had this as n and this as a. They were two different variables. Similarly, even these are two different variables. Understand it? Okay, this variable a, okay, is local to this particular function. So it has its life only till the time this function is getting executed. Okay, so once this function is active, this a has its life. But the moment this function returns, or this function gets over, okay, then this a does not exist in the memory. It has no life. Okay, and this a, which is the part of the main program, this a is called as the global variable. Okay, so this will be called as the global variable. So all the global variables means it will be normally it is the part of the main program, and this a, okay, which is a part of a function, will be called as a local variable, local to this function, and this is global variable. Okay, so if I try to have a value 2 and then I'm passing a, remember that only the value of a we are passing to this a, we're not passing any reference. Understand it? Okay, so if I'm making certain changes, and then let me just print a out here. Okay, so the value of a in the main program is 2, then I'm calling the function passing a, and then I'm changing that value to 5, and then I'm printing it, and then again in the main program, again I'm printing the value of a. So when I'm printing the value of a out here, it will refer to the global variable, that is 2. Okay, so if you see the output, okay, let me just show you the output. So this is 5 and 2. Why we had this different values is because these two a, again I repeat, are two different variables. So when I change the value of a as 5 and I printed that value, so the value of this local a got changed. Nothing got changed to that global variable a. Okay, and so it printed 5, and then when it returned to the main program, that is print a, so it will refer to its own global variable, that is this a, and the value of this a is 2, and so it printed the value 2. Okay, now there are techniques by which we can change the global variable in this local function. Okay, but I'm not going to go deep at this point. I just want to keep it very short, and I just want you to understand about functions, arguments, and parameters. But just a small thing that I wanted to tell you, that even if this name is same, these are two different variables. That's the only point I want to make it clear right now. Okay, and then we are going to work with local and global variables. I will be taking a separate tutorial onto it, and how to access the global variable, how to change the value of a global variable into a function, that we are going to see in my upcoming tutorial. Okay, so at this point Just be very sure, even if you use the same variable name for your argument and your parameters, understand this will be two different variables. Okay, that's it for today. Bye for now.